Welcome to Not Your Typical Church Ladies, faith conversations for your real life. I'm Vicky, and each week I'm joined with my fellow workers in the vineyard, Anne and Karen, to break open the Sunday scriptures and talk about life and faith and everything in between. Join your Not Typical Church Ladies on this journey each week.
Hi, everybody, and welcome back and Merry Christmas. We are now officially in the Christmas season. So this is actually your Advent/Christmas podcast series. I'm back with Karen and Vicky, and today we are talking about the three wise men, the Feast of the Epiphany. And we're also going to do a little bit about the Feast of the Holy Family, which is on Christmas Eve this year, or New Year's Eve this year. So lots to talk about as we wrap up our Christmas season. And what do you guys want to start with today? Any first thoughts about the three kings, the three wise men?
So I always love that the wise men are always depicted in the crush scene when they really didn't show up until like a lot later.
Mm-hmm.
And it's so funny how last week we were talking about the shepherds, and like in my crush, I don't have, I do have shepherds, but like in a lot of the crush scenes, you don't see the shepherds, but you see the wise men. And I feel like, I know, I'm like, come on, guys, they weren't there yet. But the idea of like this, you know, we don't really know who they were. We say wise men, they weren't necessarily nobility. They may have been like astronomers or priests or something, but the fact that they were actually called by Herod, right, to like go find out Jesus's location so they could kill him. And thankfully they decided not to do that because we wouldn't be where we are today. But like just the idea of like more people coming to acknowledge this little baby and how much power and influence this little baby had, but no one knew it until like thousands of years later. I just think that that's like super cool.
Yeah.
I always love too, I think, kind of similar to the theme of last week when we were talking about the shepherds being the lowest of low. Again, we have an outcast group. They weren't Jewish. But they knew the prophecy and they saw the things, and they maybe were astronomers to read, and they just had to see who had been foretold to come for so long, all these prophecies, right? That even those who were not, who are not really in the end, were like, we have to go see this and see who this is.
Yeah, I had actually made a note in preparing for today about, because we've been encouraging people to like take a look at like Luke and Matthew, the first few chapters over the course of Advent. And so to put the three kings in the context of Matthew, like Matthew was writing for a Jewish audience. So he's very concerned with like how the prophecies in the Old Testament are revealed in Jesus, like over and over and over again. He spends time going back to like the Old Testament and explaining like where, like how Jesus is the fulfillment of whatever that passage was. But like here we have people from a completely different culture, or possibly multiple cultures, who like in tradition, there's often depicted as being like from different races or different parts of the world. And we don't know that according to scripture, but it's often in our artwork and traditional retellings and things like that. So, but anyway, these people were coming from outside the tradition and still honoring Jesus, so yeah, I don't know. It's just kind of like Jesus is here for everybody, even in Matthew. Although I do want to say too that if you're the kind of person who, when we encouraged you to read Matthew and Luke chapters 1 and 2, like got to the very beginning of Matthew and it's all the genealogy of Jesus, I mean, if you are the type of person who needs permission to skip that part, I give you permission to skip that part. There's actually some cool videos on the internet explaining the symbolic meaning of all that stuff. If you're interested in that, go for it. But really, like, don't get hung up on that part. That's all just to show that Jesus is the fulfillment of the Hebrew scriptures. So yeah, don't get hung up on the details. Good advice for the entire Christmas season, I think.
Yeah, or try to say any of their names correctly as well.
I always feel so bad for the reader on Christmas Eve who has to do that reading. Like, why are we doing this to ourselves every single year? Every single year at the family, whatever the early Christmas Eve mass,
Yeah.
it's usually around like 3:30 that time. That first chapter of Matthew is always the reading, right?
Right. You know what's funny is like there's over the years I've heard so many lectors proclaiming that, and there's some that like get into this rhythm, and it's like, oh yeah, you got it. Like it's just like name after name after name, and then there's others that are like, yeah. But it's
Maybe I'm wrong. Do we do that in the afternoon mass, or is it in the evening? It's at one of the masses on
Yeah.
Christmas. I'm just like,
so
wow,
yeah,
a lot.
Um,
It's a lot.
what about these gifts? Like before we started filming, we probably should have filmed this part, but like we were just talking about the gifts that were brought, and Vicky, you said they're the most unpractical.
Yeah. Listen, if they had been three wise women, they would have just let Mary take a nap. They were
Right?
like, we got you, go take a nap.
Yep.
I still think about the neighbor who, when Bridget was born, knocked on my door. Like I would, this was like within a day of maybe or two bringing her home from the hospital. Knocked on the door with a plate of whole wheat muffins and these little egg quiche thingies, and her kids. And she said, "We're here to take Liam for a walk. Here's
Oh,
food." And like, yeah, I
yeah.
know,
I mean,
I
I
know.
know we're supposed to be talking about the wise men. I get it. But like, I can't help but thinking about Mary. Like, this is just like, I mean, she's 13, 14 years old, just gave birth in this like cave, not, whatever, wherever she was. Baby's in a trough, and like, there's Joseph. Who else was there? Like, I know, like you were saying, yeah, like when I had my kids, like my family was over, they were cleaning, they were doing laundry, and I just was like, oh, this is great. And I remember when they stopped coming, I'm like, no. Um,
Can you
but
imagine opening it up and being like, myrrh?
yeah, like what can I
Thank
do?
you so much. Like, myrrh's what they embalm bodies with, isn't it?
Yes. But I did hear that it was like foreshadowing the death,
Yeah, there's
So
like
I
symbolic
mean,
meanings to the gift. So
yeah,
like
I
I
guess
think
there's still that symbolic meaning.
gold kind of would be practical. I
Right.
wonder what they spent the gold. Do you think they needed the gold when they relocated to Egypt, like to get started in a new country? I
Yeah,
wonder.
probably would have been a practical.
Yeah. Okay. So the gold was a good gift.
Yeah.
I think that symbolizes like that Jesus was a king, or like
Yeah.
the frankincense. Well, incense is used in religious holy ceremonies, right? So that's like
Yep.
his ritual kingship.
Yeah.
The myrrh is his death.
Yeah.
Still not a great baby gift, no matter
No.
how you
No.
want to look at it. But but we talk, like we're supposed to be talking about the kings, but we're talking about Mary. But like she pondered things in her heart, right? It's that scripture tells us that in a couple of different places, and
It's like my favorite line of that passage.
yeah, so she would think about these things as he was growing up, and probably had him in a box somewhere. I don't know. Like,
Yeah.
it's just interesting to think about that.
Well, and I wonder, Karen, when you mentioned her age, and something I just never thought about, and is the idea of like these gifts were, we also talk about like the common Jewish person versus like someone who had the additional education and went on to be a teacher. How often did she ever see these items
Oh,
in her life before this moment? I mean, I don't imagine gold was something that
Right.
by wealth level, so these like maybe as much as I pick on them not being practical, maybe the oddity, not the oddity, but the fact that they were something she had never, her and Joseph both, right? Probably had never encountered these items before, made them so like you would have to ponder like my child is worthy of these items that we don't are not part of our lives in many ways, day-to-day life.
Right. And I just assumed that like the gold was like money she could have spent, but maybe it was an object that was, maybe it was a small object, or maybe it was a symbolic object or a sentimental, like who knows? Who knows what that was?
Yeah.
That's interesting to think about.
That just reminded me of I was talking to a baptism family the other day about like the signs and symbols of baptism, and that's what I love about our faith is that our symbols are tangible things that we can touch and smell and use every day, and that they're not hidden only for like the highest of high priests or things like that. So like, Vicky, when you had mentioned that, maybe, yeah, like how is my kid worthy of this stuff? But now looking back on it, we can see where the symbolism came into play. But it's just so cool, like that God wants us to be in communion with the priests and with the sisters and the religious, that we are all able to share in that together, and that nothing is set apart for certain people. So I don't know, we don't really know like what else that stuff was used for during that time.
Yeah. And it must have been like, I don't know, a weighty gift too. Like, because those meetings are hefty. Like they're the kind of thing you have to like live into, and like, what is this going to mean for my kid as he grows up and as he grows into the person God's made him to be? And yeah, and we know what she went through and what he went. Yeah. Um, this is switching topics, but I was also thinking about the Magi as models of discernment, because like they saw a star and they followed it, but they followed it because they had done like prayer and study and had discussions and researched and then they followed by making this like giant trip to see a baby, right? It was the star, but it wasn't only the star. It was the star in communion with like all their knowledge and all of their community and their sharing, and they went together. And I just like, I find that a very interesting model of how we make decisions in our spiritual lives and just our daily lives. I don't know. Do you guys have anything you want to share along those lines of like the three wise men and just the decisions they had to make along the way, and how they made them?
I never thought about them as symbols of discernment, but once you said it, it totally makes sense. And like I'm a camper, and we do a lot of camping, and I have to plan. Like I have to make sure that I have everything, because if it rains, if it snows, we've had snow during camping, like, like you were saying, like they had a camel. It's not like they could pack a whole car full of items that they may or may not use. And, we talked about that last week with the shepherds. They just got up and left. And we've talked about that during Lent with the disciples. They got up and left. And it's like, man, the faith that they had in something bigger, the faith that they had in God, that what they were doing, that was the correct thing to do, and not wait or not pack certain things. Oh, I don't know. Like it gives me anxiety.
Right. To think about the journey they took.
Yeah.
And like when you think about it, because I was thinking like, okay, so they studied and they prayed and they followed the star. That was only the first leg of their journey.
Right.
And it kind of led them on like great adventure, right? But then, like you mentioned earlier, Karen, Herod was like, yeah, come back to me and tell me where Jesus is, because I want to see him too. They were born in a dream, to home by another way. Another good James Taylor song. That's the theme this Advent. But they were born to go home by another way, and listening to God in that sense, it didn't come from a star, it came from a dream, and it didn't lead them to a great adventure. It led them to safety. So like, there's no one way that God leads us on. There's many ways that God leads us on, and the call might lead us to different things. It could be to adventure, it could be wherever. Like you just never know where God is going to move and where he's going to take you.
Yeah.
I love that. And I think
Yeah.
too, that idea of,
Um,
yeah, like just that whole idea of their journey, right? And also, that contraposition of everyone can come to God in their own way. Like how the wise men came to God was through the study and this like almost like this adventure and this journey and this not fully knowing what it was, but wanting to be there, as opposed to the shepherds who just ran. Like everyone comes to God kind of in their own way, in their own path.
oh, so good. I love that. Yeah.
So we got like a twofold. We got like the lowliest of lows, highest of highs, and like everyone else in the middle.
Right. Like we're covering everybody. That's awesome.
So there
I
was
would
a plan during this, writing of the scriptures.
clearly. Yeah. I don't know. Okay. Yeah. And that's what the Feast of the Epiphany is all about, right? Like the word epiphany means, like to have this like spiritual realization or this, knowledge of meaning, right? And yeah, that's where discernment brings us, but in lots of different ways and for different people at different times.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes our aha moments can be like our mountaintop moments, like something huge happens and we're like, oh yeah. But our aha moments can also be in our daily, everyday circumstances. And, we have that whole season of Advent preparing and waiting and hoping. And now we have Christmas and we're like, yay. But we don't want to forget to still live in that moment of Christmas after Christmas and after the Epiphany. Like we still have this joy in our hearts. I mean, we are called to be joyful people. And so like to have that continuation that even though we talk about seasons, we really do have to continue that throughout into our lives and not just okay, well now it's Epiphany, Christmas is over, let's take down our trees, or Christmas Day. It really bothers me when I see Christmas trees out on December 26th. It really bothers me, but that's just me. Because I'm like, Christmas is still here. But just to like share that sense of joy and continue that the wise men's journey took, when you were saying and they went a different way, like they didn't know where they were going.
Right. Right.
And so it's going to take a while and it's okay.
Yeah. I love that you talked about mountaintop moments, Karen, because one of the songs I've been praying with a lot the last week or two has been Little Drummer Boy, which is like, so Karen and I have just come back from the National Catholic Youth Conference, bringing a group of young people to that, and which was amazing, but that's a whole story for another day. But one of the cool things we got to do there was we, for King and Country, the band played a concert. Amazing. And one of the songs they did was Little Drummer Boy, which is, well, first of all, they're just so much percussion and like amazing, like just like rock star stuff. It was a great, great way to open our time with the teens. But like this one song, which is really like, there's not that much in that song. Like, I feel like it's one of those Christmas carols that you're just goes like, yeah, right. There's not much in there. But I've been actually praying with it. And it's like, I don't know. It's really kind of profound. Like all of that boy like saw the kings going past, and they called him to come on, and so that's like the beginning of that story. But all he had was his drum, and he played his best, and Jesus smiled at him. And isn't that just kind of what we're all called to do? Like you said, Karen, like in our everyday, you just keep playing your drum. Jesus is going to keep smiling at you, and that's your everyday epiphany right there. That's really all it takes. So, yeah.
I love that. And sometimes my drum is going to be offbeat.
You're off marching to the beat of your own drum somewhere.
I do that very frequently, but.
All right. Well, this is our last episode of the season. So you guys have any last words you want to offer before we say goodbye for now until whenever the three of us get our act together again to do this another time? Any closing words?
Merry Christmas. Enjoy bringing light to others and just being with God. Merry Christmas.
Yes, enjoy all the holiday. We hope that these have helped you. Merry Christmas. And don't forget, you can still do holy napping even after
Oh,
Christmas.
yeah. Yeah. Welcome, Emmanuel, in your own way, no matter what the season.
Yeah.
Happy New Year, everybody.
Bye.
Thanks for joining us. We'll see you again soon.
On behalf of Anne, Karen, and myself, thank you again for listening to this episode of Faith Conversations for Your Real Life. Please make sure to subscribe to wherever you're listening or watching this episode. You can find the readings linked in the description box below, and we can't wait to see you again next time on Faith Conversations for Your Real Life with your favorite not so typical church ladies.